Hey guys, Zolan here, back again with another video, and today we'll be counting down my top 13 favorite action figures of 2021. And for those of you who are wondering, why top 13?
'Cause I'm evil.
You're goddamn right, Lex. But, jokes aside, to be honest with you, I couldn't narrow my list to just top 10. So, I decided to use my status as the Supreme Lord of Evil and Bringer of Death and Destruction to bring you guys a top 13 list. I hope you enjoy the comedy in that, but also, more importantly, I hope you enjoy the rest of the video, because we have a lot to talk about. So let's cut right to the chase, starting off with some ground rules. That's right, I always lay out the ground rules when I do top whatever countdowns, no matter if it's 5, 10, or 13. I always set some ground rules for myself. Therefore, the list is, for lack of a better term, fair. Rule number 1, pretty obvious, had to come out in 2021. Now, I know there is a couple of things here and on my top 13 list itself that might have come out in 2020, but for the most part were released in 2021. The official release date being 2021, and then the fact that I live in upstate New York, where we get stuff dead last, kinda helps with that. So, no, as much as I love the DC Multiverse Merciless Wave, those do not count, even though I did get the bulk of that wave in 2021. The Batman Who Laughs Sky Tyrant, as I said in the DC Multiverse video yesterday, did crack my top 10 favorite action figures of 2020 list, though, so that's something, right? But things that were eligible were Masters of the Universe Origins Wave 2, because most normal people didn't stay up till ungodly hours of the night trying to get those off of the Walmart.com initial pre-order. That said, there is absolutely nothing Masters related on my top 13. Unfortunately, look at Buddy Scareglow there, did not make it. He just was not strong enough, which, he's no slouch, don't get it twisted. But the competition this year was pretty effing fierce, so that's why he is just a mere honorable mention. And also, speaking of which, the Masterverse Scareglow, I have it in my pile of loot, or as my good buddy T-Biz, shout out to T-Biz, likes to call it, pile of debt, over on Big Bad Toy Store. I have it, it's paid for, I just don't have it in hand yet, so he will be an honorable mention. Not sure if he would have even cracked the top 10 list, because, to be honest with you, I'm jonesing for a Scareglow that's a little bit more articulated than this one right here. Even though I'm happy with this one, you guys know that 6 to 7 inch scale is my bread and butter when it comes to action figures, so that one is probably a little bit more fitting. That, and I just liked him in Revelation, aside from the fact he got punked out by Orko twice, and he was kind of Evil Lid's bitch for a little while. Not sure how I feel about that, but I digress. Still like the show. Moving on, second ground rule, I have to have it. Pretty obvious again. Not only do I have to have it though, I have to have already reviewed it, which everything here, reviews up on the channel. Everything on my top 13 list, reviews are up on the channel. I've been working like crazy to make sure I get my reviews out and done and finished and up for your guys' viewing pleasure before I do these top 10, or in this case, top 13 lists. Marvel Legends wise, still working on that. So that's why the Marvel Legends list isn't up yet. That'll be coming in a week. I think I said that in the Multiverse video yesterday, but if I didn't, it'll be up next week. About a week from today, probably. But I digress. Rule number 2, have to have it and have to have already reviewed it. Rule number 3, I have to like it. I'm not going to put something on my list because everyone else likes it. I know that seems to be a trend lately, and I hope it's just a coincidence and not just people falling into fads or trends or whatever, because while I do know that certain figures have certain status and certain qualities that allow them to be worthy of such accolades, some I feel are just kind of popularity contests. I'm not gonna lie, like the Frogman Marvel Legends figure, it's a good figure of a character nobody asked for. I mean, let's be real here. Would you rather have that or a really awesome update to the 90s Danny Ketch style Ghost Rider? Let's be honest here, okay? That said, if you do like that figure a lot, good on ya. To each their own. But, rule number 3, probably the most important one, I have to like it. Again, it just makes my list a little bit more personal to my opinions. This is my channel, so my opinions are the dominant factor here. I'm not going to base my list off of views I got on certain figures or what other people think of certain figures. I'm going to base them off of what I think, what I feel, what I think is worthy of being on this top 13 list, which, spoiler alert, none of these guys are on it. That's right. It should have been quite obvious when I was talking about good old Scareglow there that none of these guys cracked the top 13, even though they are really, really strong releases here, and quite possibly entries for the Overlord Productions Action Figure Hall of Fame. Yeah, that's right, I haven't forgot about that yet. Just haven't got to it yet. But that said, I could not fit all the honorable mentions I wanted to on screen. This is a bulk of them, but just to name a few that aren't currently sitting here at the moment, we have the Hasbro Marvel Legends Infinity Saga Surtur, the Spawn Universe Redeemer, the Platinum Edition version, the one without all the QC issues, and Raven Spawn. Really like those figures, but they just weren't strong enough to crack my top 13. Honorable mention also to the Clown. I don't have that figure yet, so that's why he's not here. As well as the Blue Mandarin Spawn and Deluxe Mandarin Spawn, which were Walmart and GameStop exclusives. And then we also have the Hasbro Marvel Legends Colossus Build-A-Figure. Really solid figure. I like that thing a heck of a lot more than I thought I would. The Marvel Legends What If / Watcher Wave Zombie Captain America. Really strong release. The Retro Card Sandman. Don't have that figure, but looks like a really solid figure. And as far as stuff that I don't have sitting here, I think that about covers it. Oh, Mythic Legions. Malafar, love that guy, super awesome figure, and the bulk of the All-Stars releases, because again, they fall into the category that they were kind of released beforehand, they are just reissues. I want to save my list for stuff that is kind of new and we haven't seen before, so even though I love them, good old Malleus, Tibius, and Scaphoid did not crack the top 13 list, and neither did Baron Volliger, Torion, or Zazar. Other honorable mentions, I guess, from the Four Horsemen, because they just did a super kick-ass job this past year with releases, getting stuff out. We also have the Equidron, Varthog, Magnus, and let's just say the Aerothere Wave as a whole, because that wave is just really solid. The Hellfire Goblin. Lots of honorable mentions to be had here. And then Transformers. Can't forget about those, because Transformers was kind of a big deal on the channel this past year. I reviewed the heck out of some Kingdom figures, and even though I liked them a lot, they just weren't strong enough to crack the top 10. Dinobot, Megatron, Ravage, Tigatron, and Rhinox. Even though I don't have those guys yet, they look really solid, which is a trend with the Transformers Kingdom line. I think that's some of the best stuff we've ever gotten for Beast Wars, period. But that aside, that about wraps it up for the honorable mentions not on screen. So why don't we actually talk about the guys sitting right in front of you, huh? Starting from left to right, we got the Hasbro Marvel Legends PulseCon exclusive Spider-Man Retro Card Animated Series style Venom. That was a mouthful. Love that figure. I'm so happy it exists, but at the end of the day, he should have had the white squares, and the ports on the shoulders should have been plugged in, especially since this was an exclusive. It was at an exclusive price point. I think those things should have been done. I don't know, that's just me. The ports don't really bug me, but I do see people's argument there. Had those things been done, he might have actually cracked the top 13. Who knows? We already talked about Scareglow, so we'll skip over him. Then we have the Gunslinger Spawn from the McFarlane Toy Spawn Universe line. That was a Target exclusive. Shout out to T-Biz for hooking me up with that one, which, funny enough, in true Overlord fashion, once I get it from T-Biz, Mr. Brian, aka my dad, goes to the store and finds it about a week later. So, you know, that's just how it is, isn't it? But probably Next to who actually did crack the top 13, my second favorite figure from the Spawn Universe line. Again, I don't have the clown yet, but I don't think I'll like him more than that Gunslinger Spawn. I just think he's a really cool looking figure. I love the kind of classic Spawn look mixed with a old-fashioned style cowboy with the stovepipe hat, the shotgun, the 2 pistols. He just looks really freaking killer, man. While the paint might not be as good as the old Gunslinger Spawn, I still think it's exceptional for the modern action figure market. Moving on from him, though, we have the Malefic Spawn from the Mortal Kombat 11 series. I absolutely adore this figure. You guys know the Mortal Kombat 11 Spawn was my #1 favorite action figure of 2020, so it's kind of surprising to see a really awesome variant not crack the top 13 of 2021, but at the end of the day, while I will let most of the paint kind of quality on this guy slide to the wayside a bit, I think the cape, if anything, should have been more like the original Mortal Kombat 11 Spawns. That had a nice wash to it. It is at least a darker color. I think the Vibrant Red, just kind of a bit of an eyesore at certain angles, and probably would have looked better with some kind of wash or just a darker color altogether. Moving on from him, though, speaking of paint, we have the Hasbro Marvel Legends new Build-A-Figure Wave Dormammu, the Dread Dormammu himself, a super retro classic version of the character, something we've all been wanting, and gosh darn it, they screwed up the head. The head lacks contrast. I don't really care if the head's not exactly the right colors, but I need to be able to see it. I don't have the best vision, for those of you who don't already know, so therefore it is a bitch for me to see that Dormammu face sculpt, which I know is pretty solid and super evil looking, but the fire is just too close to the color of the face. Now, if they had gone a little bit modern with it and just painted the face black, like the more modern look for Dormammu, I think this guy might have actually had a better chance cracking my top 13. But that said, I do also think he's a bit on the short side. But before we move on, just a quick honorable mention to the new Build-A-Figure Wave Red Skull, who reuses the same body. Because gosh darn it, if we haven't been waiting for a decent Red Skull in the Marvel Legends line, whether it's that costume or otherwise, it was long overdue, and we finally got one this past year. Moving on from them, though, we have the Mandarin Spawn. This is the Scarlet Edge version of the Mandarin Spawn. My favorite of the 3 because I have the original Scarlet Edge Mandarin Spawn from the Spawn Dark Ages Series 2, which I think was Spawn Series 11, 12-ish? Maybe it was 14 or 16. Either way, it was a little bit later in the 90s. A little bit more of a staction, a little bit more paint, but this guy, of the spawns I have, the Mandarin spawns I have, has the best paint apps. He looks the best. He's a really sharp looking figure. I absolutely love that figure. And then, last but certainly not least, we got the 2 fellas on the end here. We got the Demon from the DC Multiverse line, also brought to us by the fine folks over at McFarlane Toys. They had a lot going for him this year, good old McFarlane Toys. And let's just talk about the Mortal Kombat line for a sec. Noob Saibot, yeah, I had issues with it, but we fixed them, so no cry, no foul. And Cabal, really awesome figures. Shao Kahn, really awesome figures. I do not have Kotal Khan or the Joker yet, but they look really, really cool. And enough people got them in 2021 for me to consider them as 2021 releases. So there's your lot. But the Demon, along with the majority, the whole shebang of the Batman Beyond Last Night on Earth Target exclusive Joker Bot Collect-A-Build set. Definitely worthy of an honorable mention. I love the Batman Beyond stuff McFarlane put out this year. I think it's some of the best the multiverse had to offer. But it's the Demon that outshines all the rest. He is the lone honorable mention from the multiverse line that is here today. He looks absolutely awesome. I love that figure. Again, the paint, we're going to talk about that a little bit later because there are a couple of multiverse entries on the top 13, but the paint, just a tad lacking. Just a tad. Not a lot. Don't get it twisted. This guy looks a lot better than some of the releases lately. Has a decent amount of paint considering the fact that the paint kind of took a hit, probably due to cost, but gotta be honest with you, that figure still pops on a shelf. He looks absolutely amazing. And speaking of figures that just pop, they just shine right in the light, blinded by the light, as it were. We have the Hasbro Marvel Legends Ursa Major Build-A-Figure Wave Ultron. We finally got an Ultron that looks like freaking Ultron in 2021. Who'da thunk it? And while I absolutely adore this figure, and you can look forward to seeing him, Venom, and Dormammu next week on my Marvel Legends Top 10 video, he unfortunately just was not strong enough to crack the top 13. Even when I add 3 extra spaces, Marvel Legends just did not have a chance. I'd say, if anything, they might have stood a better chance with Surtur if he came with an alternate kind of snarling or just closed mouth head, a more stoic head, as opposed to just the head, which is cool, but I do like a neutral head sculpt once in a while. So with that being said, that's all the honorable mentions I have on screen. I'm sure there are plenty more I could talk about, but we need to get this train rolling, kicking things off with the number 13 spot. And also, spoiler alert, Hasbro don't have a lot of entries on this list. Coming in at the number 13 spot is by far the best female action figure of 2021, and that is of course going to be none other than the Executive Replicas / Loose Collector Lady Death from Coffin Comics. That is right, this is the first action figure from this sort of line. The next one is going to be Hell Witch, which your boy already pre-ordered because he loved this figure so much he wants to support this kind of co-op company dealio so they get better and better. I mean, have you seen the recent pre-orders for Purgatory, Vampirella, and Red Sonja? I mean, that speaks leaps and bounds of how this co-op has evolved over literally the course of a year, because this is the first figure, and I think the only figure we've gotten from these guys so far, and if there's any indication, the future is looking quite bright. At the number 12 spot is the maestro of the falsetto himself, the one, the only, the King Diamond, brought to us by the fine folks over at Super 7 as a part of their, I guess, Heavy Metal Ultimates line. I don't know, there's only 2 figures in this line thus far. I'm hoping we see a lot more in the near to distant future. Well, maybe not that much, because your boy's a little tight on cash thanks to the 4 Horsemen. But either way, I really love the fact that we finally got a super awesome posable King Diamond action figure. Super 7 is no stranger when it comes to King Diamond action figures, but this is the first one that's really to scale with the bulk of my collection, and one you can actually do something with. But I did have my issues with the articulation, particularly in the knees. I don't think it's the best engineered, but the number 11 spot kind of fixes that. And coming in at the number 11 spot is the figure that just barely outshined the King, and that is going to be none other than the man, the myth, the legend himself, Mr. Papa Meredith from the band Ghost. Of course, also stemming from Super 7's questionable Heavy Metal Ultimates line. Again, I hope we see some more. This guy does some things a little bit better than King Diamond, particularly in the one area I had a tiny issue with King Diamond, and that is the knees. The knees on this guy are a little bit better as far as engineering goes, and that's really why he edges King Diamond out ever so slightly. That and the arms. They took out the bicep swivel and just gave him the hinge swivel elbow. He still got thigh cuts like King Diamond, but those are well hidden enough. I don't think that's that big of a deal. But sometimes, kids, less is more. And while this guy may not have as many cuts in him, I think his articulation scheme is something Super 7 should look into for the rest of this Heavy Metal Ultimates line, because I think it just works really well here. And the fact he comes with 2 different heads and 2 different robes to give you 2 different looks for this version of Papa Meredith, I think is a nice little bonus and entices people to pick up too. I'm not doing that because I ain't rich, but would be a nice idea. And let's not get it twisted. King Diamond's no slouch either. He comes with the cool YouTube interviews head and the Merciful Fate makeup as well. At the number 10 spot is going to be none other than Dr. Fate from the Mezco 1/12 Collective. That's right. A Mezco figure has cracked your boys top 13, and in this case, cracked the top 10 of said top 13. And what an amazing figure this is. But you're probably wondering why he ranks so low on this list. Well, I can tell you up front, it's not because of how the magic effects were handled on this guy, although I do believe there are better, easier, and more effective ways to achieve such things. That's not why he ranks so low. The reason he ranks so low is because I have a couple of issues with the company itself. Now, don't get it twisted. The quality is there. It is bar none there. There is no doubt in my mind that this and many other figures that Mezco makes are quality pieces. That's not the issue. The issue I have is that they don't really engage with the consumers like the other toy companies that are around their same level, like Super 7, NECA, Four Horsemen, just to name a few. Because typically, when something's delayed, when something's backed up, when something's gone awry, they'll let you know, whether it's in an email, a social media post, a video sometimes, or otherwise. Mezco don't do that. And for the price point that a lot of these figures clock in at, I think if anyone should be doing it, it should be Mezco. I mean, they did just offer up a, was it $300 Godzilla pre-order this past year? Well, I know that's going to be a quality piece. Be nice to know when the freaking thing's coming out, you know? And I can't speak from personal experience myself because I've never directly pre-ordered through Mezco. In fact, I've only really ever paid for one Mezco figure, and right now it's just a mere $25 down payment. Of course, I'm talking about the 1/12 Collective Ghost Rider, which seems to be getting held back, pushed back, delayed every time I turn around, but yet Mezco's not saying why, but at the same time, they're still pumping out Gomez figures like they're going out of style. I'm all for making your own IP stuff, but maybe you should fulfill the stuff that people have already paid for. Pre-orders people have been waiting for months, some years maybe. I mean, look at Conan. I think it would just give people a little bit more confidence in your company as a whole, and would have you in better standing amongst the collecting community, because I see a lot of people kind of talking smack about Mezco not delivering product, but yet here's a Gomez, here's a Rumble Society, here's something that we designed that you didn't already pay for, but we're pushing it out first anyways. I don't know the ins and outs of all that stuff, but the one thing I do know is that a lot of other companies don't exactly do that. So, at the end of the day, I love this figure. I love it to pieces. It is by far the best Dr. Fate figure money can buy. But at the end of the day, I do have those issues with the company it stems from, which is why he takes the number 10 spot. Only the number 10 spot on my list. But before we move on, I have to give a quick shout out to Mr. Stephen Bishotti of the My Wife Is Gonna Kill Me podcast for doing a trade with me so I could get this guy and not pay an arm and a leg for it. Adding to that, I gotta give a shout out to my good buddy Evil Villain for sending me the figure I used to get this guy without paying an arm and a leg for it. So I gotta give props to them for this one. At the number 9 spot is going to be none other than the infamous Death Metal Batman atop his mighty steed, the Death Metal Bat Cycle, part of the McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse line. This was a piece that your boy absolutely had to have as soon as it was announced, and boy did it not disappoint. That said, he does have the Cliffs of Dover thing going on in the elbows. They are a bit unsightly, but I'm willing to let that slide because he just looks so freaking cool on this bike, man. Just look at this thing and tell me you wouldn't be the coolest guy in town if you were seen with this piece on your desk at the office. I mean, let's be real here. Who's gonna be the cool guy? The guy with the cup of coffee that says #1 Dad, or the guy who has death metal Batman on a death metal bat cycle? I think we all know who the cool guy is. That said, and I actually didn't touch upon this during Dr. Fate's segment of this video, but much like Mezco, McFarlane Toys saw a bit of a change in leadership, at least as far as their DC division goes. As far as I'm concerned, as far as I know, Ty Butler is unfortunately no longer working for the Todd father at this current time, which is a darn shame because this is kind of the last hurrah before him and his team got let go, unfortunately. And going back to Mezco, apparently the guy who used to run it doesn't anymore. The guy who does now, not as cool. From what I heard, not as cool. So that in of itself kind of sucks. But we ain't talking about Mezco, we're talking about McFarlane. Todd, do yourself a favor and get your old crew back because they did amazing work on this line. And while some of the new stuff is good, I think it could be even better if you brought your old team back. But with that being said, don't get it twisted. This piece is still amazing and is totally deserving of the number 9 spot on my list. At the number 8 spot, and it's only because I had some issues with my particular figure that he ranks so low, is going to be none other than the Four Horsemen Studios Figura Obscura Krampus. And for those of you who keep calling this a Mythic Legions figure, go ahead, but that's not what it is. But either way, I love this figure. I love almost everything the Horsemen do, but for whatever reason, my Krampus here had umpteen amount of issues, and still does. I have a clear elastic band that's allowing him to stand for us right now because his hips, for whatever reason, are still insanely loose. And this is the 3rd crotch piece I've plugged them into, so pretty sure it's the hip joints and not the crotch pieces. But again, I could be wrong, but if there's one thing that Four Horsemen always deliver on, it's quality customer service. They've been a little quiet this past week, so I hope everything's alright on their end. But I know that at some point, my issues with this figure will eventually be resolved, a la emails back and forth with the man himself, Chris Garrich. That said, if this thing did not have any issues, he probably would have bumped up a couple of spots, but since I had the issues I had, I have to rank him based off of my experience with this figure, so that's why he takes only the number 8 spot on my list. At number 7 is by far the best Mega Fig we ever got from the McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse line, and of course, I'm talking about the one, the only, Defender of the Green himself, Swamp Thing. This guy puts the Mega in Mega Fig, and while I know that a lot of people like Darkseid or Steppenwolf or even the King Shark ones, this guy is a chonk, C-H-O-N-K, of plastic. This guy is absolutely massive. He is large and in charge. He is by far the biggest, largest, and most massive thing on my top 13 action figures of 2021 list thus far. What? That's right. There's only one who was able to top this guy. We will take a look at him right now. And of course, I'm talking about none other than the Violator Mega Fig from the McFarlane Toys Spawn Universe line. That's right. This guy clocks in at the number 6 spot, just beating out Swamp Thing because, personally, I like the Violator a little bit more as a character. And just look at this thing. The sculpt, the paint, the size, the price. For 50 bucks, you're getting an awful lot of plastic here. And while Swamp Thing's no slouch, especially at the price I paid for him, which was about 35 bucks, we already talked about how much I love that figure yesterday in my top 10 DC Multiverse figures video. So check that out if you haven't already, because today we're going to be talking about the Violator, because the Violator is a feat in action figure anything. Just the size, the paint, the sculpt. I already said it. I don't need to say it again, because if anything, this guy is by far the crown jewel of the Spawn universe line thus far, and gives me hopes for a really awesome Cygor in the near to distant future. Up for pre-order now, but who has time for that crap? Give me more plastic, Todd. I want it. I need it. I must have it as soon as possible. So for those reasons and those reasons only, the Violator takes the number 6 spot on my list. At the number 5 spot is more than likely going to be a very controversial pick for some of you guys out there, but that is of course going to be none other than the McFarlane Toys Masterworks Spawn 1 Remastered Edition. That is right, the Kickstarter Spawn ranks in the top 5 of my top 10 list, despite all the stuff that has come out in the year 2021, and the fact that this is not exactly the Spawn we all wanted, which was a updated, fully articulated one, basically an update to the 10th anniversary, let's be real here. But that said, I think that while this isn't a very dynamic figure as far as posability goes, it is in presence. This guy evokes awesomeness. 90s, straight to the point awesomeness. I love how this guy looks on a shelf. I love the giant cape. I love the sword. I love the gun. I love the extra head, the necroplasm effects, the extra hands. The packaging on this guy is fantastic. However, the main reason he is this high on my list is because A, highest grossing action figure on Kickstarter in all of history and time, period. That's a pretty cool thing. Granted, that's not really the reason. The reason is, would we have the Spawn universe line without this guy? I don't know. I don't know the sales of the Mortal Kombat Spawn, which as far as an action figure goes, is the superior figure, but if this guy did not do so well, I don't know if Todd himself would have exactly seen the interest in the Spawn line that he does now. And now we are looking forward to Wave 2 of that Spawn universe line. So I gotta thank this figure for not only being just straight up freaking awesome, but also helping Todd see that there is an interest for Spawn, and that Spawn can survive in the toy aisles today. Kicking off the big four at the number 4 spot, of course, is going to be none other than the Hasbro Transformers War for Cybertron Kingdom Voyager class Optimus Primal. The only Hasbro entry on my list, because if you paid attention to the beginning of the video, you know that there will be no Marvel Legends, no Star Wars Black, no G.I. Joe Classified, and from this point onward, no more Transformers. That is right. And while Hasbro did bring their A-game this past year, they just got outshined by the other companies, which there is nothing wrong with that. It is nice to have some variety as far as a top 10, or in your boy's case, a top 13 goes, because last year for 2020, they had, I think, 4 spots on my top 10 list, which that was then, and this is now. And even though they only took 1 spot on the list, they made it into the big 4 with this guy right here. This is by far, quite possibly my favorite Transformer in my entire Transformers collection. That's right, I'm saying it. I'm saying it right here, right now. This guy has very little wrong with it. I don't know how they could have improved the engineering to make this guy any better than he already is. He's got the swords, he's got the animated look in the head sculpt, he's got his shoulder cannons, which store in the back, he's got his arm cannons, which collapse into the arms. The only thing he did not come with is his Skull Morningstar, which you did kind of receive if you bought the Paleotrex figure. You could pop his noggin off and give Primal his spiked club mace weapon. That said, that being the only thing missing, even though it is my favorite weapon of Primal's because it is a skull with spikes on it, because you can't get more heavy metal than that. This figure is dang near perfect. It's borderline flawless. Feels a bit on the cheap side in places, and that's really the only reason he's only gonna crack the number 4 spot on my list. At the number 3 spot, and I know it was only a matter of time before we talked about this guy. Who are we talking about? We are talking about none other than the NECA Toys Gargoyle's Ultimate Goliath. That's right, the first installment into what is to be, to my understanding anyways, a very awesome and very expansive line in the year 2022. Toy Fair is right around the corner, and already NECA has already showed us the core Gargoyle characters from Season 1 and Thalog, so nice little bonus there, a chef's kiss as it were. That said, what are they going to show for Toy Fair? I have no idea, but I've never been more excited for a toy line since, well, really anything Four Horsemen do. So with that being said, that's the main reason this guy cracks not only the top 10, not only the top 4, but the top 3, because he is a beacon, a light in the darkness of some awesome stuff to come in the year 2022. Even though I did have my issues with this figure, some blue tack will fix that. I'll bypass that, I'll let that slide, I'll ignore its existence, because the fact that this thing exists and we got it in 2021 despite shipping issues, that's the reason he takes the number 3 spot on my list. At the number 2 spot, it's going to be none other than the mighty Aerothere atop his trusty steed Aethon from the Four Horsemen Studios' Mythic Legions line. This guy was, of course, a part of his own self-titled wave, the Aerothere Wave, and boy, what an amazing piece this is. Quite possibly the crown jewel of the Mythic Legions line as a whole at this current time. This gives me high hopes for the other 3 horsemen that the horsemen plan to deliver in the near to distant future over the next couple of years. Gotta tell you, this is a good sign, folks. A really good sign. And if this guy is any indicator of what Aerothere is gonna be like, I have even higher hopes for Poxus. So that is why he takes the number 2 spot on my list. That, and just look at this thing. It's metal as all get out. Of course, I'm going to rank this guy insanely high on my list. Even though I did have some issues with it as far as looseness and even a broken piece on poor Aerothere's noggin, the visor. For those of you who remember my review, it did crack and shatter on mine. So that kind of sucks, but again, thanks to the man himself, Chris Garwich. I'm unsure how to pronounce his last name because I am a boob. I was able to get all my issues with this thing resolved, so therefore I can't knock off any points because it's amazing. Just look at it. And my number 1 favorite action figure of 2021 is gonna be none other than the Four Horsemen Studios Mythic Legion's Aerothere Wave, Belphegor. If you watched my Mythic Legion's top 10 video from last week, you probably knew this guy was going to be my number 1 here. Spoiler alert, I know, but I assume most of you have already seen that video, so it doesn't really matter. Because at the end of the day, this guy is number 1 for one reason, and one reason only. And while no, I do understand he looks a lot like the Lord of Darkness from the movie Legend, and as much of a Tim Curry fan as your boy is, that's not the reason. The main reason is he looks like a character I created when I was in 6th grade, around the age of 11 to 12, Blade Killer. He looks almost exactly like Blade Killer, albeit maybe a little bit different as far as the facial features go, but it's close enough for me. It's close enough for your boy, and that is why he takes the #1 spot. It looks like something I created, even though it isn't technically marketed as that. It is close enough for me to be like, hey, if I got an extra one of these, I could totally make a custom Blade Killer action figure for a relatively reasonable price. Now, granted, I do need to pick up some extra parts because, yes, of course, I picked up an extra one of these figures. Not just because I like it that much, and I probably might have done that anyways, but because I do intend to make a custom Blade Killer, and at some point, I will do a bit of a showcase of that custom when it is finally completed. Give you guys a bit of a rundown on Blade Killer as far as the character goes, because I think as far as his story goes, you guys might have some interest in it. I don't know. I don't like to toot my own horn, but I have been praised for my writing in the past, so take that for what it's worth. That said, Belphegor is my #1 favorite action figure of 2021. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. We're putting a cap on 2021 as far as all action figure lines go. I still got to do my Marvel Legends top 10. That'll be next weekend after I finish up my reviews for, well, the majority of the Colossus wave. It's not done yet. I do not have Magneto at this current time, but I do have most of the wave, enough to build a figure, so that's really what counts, right? So a week from today, I'll be posting my top 10 Legends of 2021 because, unfortunately, as much as Hasbro brought it in the Legends line, they weren't strong enough to crack the top 10, unfortunately, and that is a shame because they did give us a lot of really solid villain figures this past year. But I assure you, if the PulseCon Venom was a little bit better, you might have seen him in this video. But stay tuned, you might see him in the video next week. Who knows? But with that being said, what are your guys' top 10, or if you want to be a little bit more adventurous, top 13 action figures of 2021? Let me know in the comments below. And also, let me know if you enjoyed this video. If you want to see more top 10s from 2021, please let me know. I'm sure I can think of something. I'm actually currently debating on doing a top 10 Transformers Kingdom figures once I finally pick up the rest of what would probably make that list. But for right now, that's going to be on hold for the time being. So that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. And if you are so inclined, please hit that notification bell so you know whenever I upload more content to the channel, because we've got to show that algorithm who's boss, right? And if you haven't already, hit me up on Instagram at Overlord Productions. But as always, keep comments civil, because the world sucks enough as it is. Hopefully it gets better in 2022. I don't know. Fingers crossed. But with that said, until next time, I'll catch you guys later.